Greetings to you all. Welcome to class 9, unit 5, poem The River, written by Caroline Ann Bowles. Today we are going to do the book back exercise, and in the end we will sing it as a song because this is a memoriter. Section B. Read the following lines and answer the questions given below. Appreciation questions. Over the yellow pebbles dancing, through the flowers and foliage glancing. The question is, how does the river flow? The river flows, dancing through the flowers and foliages. It means dancing through the flowers and foliage. B section. What is meant by foliage? Foliage means leaves of plants. It means cluster of leaves and branches, everything. Second question. River, river, swelling river, on you rush through rough and smooth. Question is, why does the poet mention the river to be swelling? The river is rising. So, the poet mentioned the river to be swelling. B. What are the surfaces the river flow through? So, the answer is the river flows through the rough and smooth surfaces. 3. Over rocks by rose bank sweeping like impetuous youth. Question is, where does the rose grow? The rose grows on the bank of the river. B. Which stage of man is compared here? The youth stage of man is compared here. Fourth question. Broad and deep and still as time, seeming still yet still in motion. What is broad and deep? The river is broad and deep. Is the time still? No, the time is not still. Fifth question. Tending onward to the ocean, just like mortal prime. Question is, where is the river flowing? The river is flowing to the ocean. What does the poet mean by mortal prime? Man's important stage is mortal prime. Okay, poetic devices, anaphora. Anaphora is a repetition of certain words or phrases at the beginning of successive lines of writing or speech. Understand? Then epithet is also given. So, we will discuss all these things in the later stage. Next one, figures of speech now. Section C. Read the following lines and answer the questions. Bright you sparkle on your way, over the yellow pebble dancing, through the flowers and foliage glancing, like a child at play. Pick out the rhyming words. So you can easily find out rhyming words means we should see the end of the line. So we can see here, way, play, dancing, glancing. So these are the rhyming words. Mention the rhyme scheme of the poem. So A, B, B, A. Okay? Because first and last words are same. 3. Through the flowers and foliage glancing, like a child at play. Mention the figure of speech used in the above line. Give various other examples from the poem. Like impetuous youth. So when we use the word like or as, we call it as simile. Just like mortal prime, like, okay, just like. Next one. Broad and deep, as still as time. So as is there, also simile. Like eternity, like is there. Fine. So whenever like and as is there, we call it as simile. Next one. Fourth. Seeming still, yet still in motion. Pick out the words in alliteration from the above lines. So alliteration we have to find out. Seeming, still, still. So consonant sound repeated means it is called as alliteration. Identify the other examples from the poem for alliteration. So many examples are there. We'll just go one by one. Bright you sparkle on your way. You. Your. Next one. Through the flowers and foliage glancing. Flowers. Foliage. On you rush through rough and smooth. Rough. Rush. Down you dash into the sea. Down. Dash. See that line hath never sounded. See. Sounded. See that sail hath never rounded. See. Sail. Fine, children. Now moving on to the question 5. Pick out the examples for epithet from the poem. So epithet means it is an adjective or phrase expressing a quality or attribute regarded as characteristics of the person or the thing mentioned. ஒரு கேரக்டராகவே ஒரு நேமே கொடுக்கறது தான் epithet. For example, little river. So ரிவருக்கு பேரே வச்சாச்சு. Little river, swelling river, brimming river, headlong river. So இது எல்லாமே epithet. Mortal prime, impetuous youth. Sixth one, pick out the examples for imagery in the poem. So now moving on to imagery. Imagery is the name given to the elements in a poem that sparks the senses. It need not be only visual. It can relate any of the 5 senses: sight, hearing, touch, taste, smell. அதாவது நம்ம மனசில் ஒரு லைன் படிக்கும்போது 5 சென்ஸ் ஆர்கன்ஸ்க்கு ஒரு இன்ஸ்டிகேஷன் கொடுத்தாக்கா தட் இஸ் இமேஜரி. கண்ணில் அப்படியே தெரியுது, ஆர் சவுண்டு காதில் கேட்குது மாதிரி, டச் பண்ணுற மாதிரி, ஸ்மெல், ஆல் தீஸ் திங்ஸ் ஆர் கால்ட் அஸ் இமேஜரி. ஸோ ஃப்ரம் த புக் வி கேன் see some more lines. Yellow pebbles. சொல்லும்போதே எல்லோ கலர் பெபிள்ஸ் முன்னாடி வருது. இம்பெச்சுவஸ் யூத் சொல்லும்போது யூத் நம்ம கண் முன்னாடி வருது. சீமிங் ஸ்டில்லாக இருக்குது. டேஷ் இன் டு த சீ, குடுகுடு நோடி போகிற மாதிரி. த்ரூ த ஃப்ளார்ஸ் அண்ட் ஃபாலியேஜ் கிளான்சிங். ஸோ ஃப்ளவர்ஸ் கண் முன்னாடி வருது. கிளான்சிங். ஆன் யூ ரஷ் த்ரூ ரஃப் அண்ட் ஸ்மூத். ஸோ ரஃப், ஸ்மூத். லவுடர், ஃபாஸ்டர், ப்ராலிங், லீப்பிங். Broad and deep and still, seeming still, yet still in motion by rose banks. ஸோ இது எல்லாமே சொல்லும்போது மனசுக்கு முன்னாடி அந்த இமேஜ் வருது. ஸோ they are called as imagery. Next one. Moving on to section D. Answer the following in a paragraph of about 120 to 150 words. How does the poet bring about the comparison of life with the river? Explain it with reference to the poem. It means how the poet is comparing or life of a man is compared to the river. How he is comparing? So children, when you write a paragraph, you can write poem written by poetess and the theme. Okay, poem is the river, poetess is Caroline Ann Bowles, theme the power of river. So shall we see? The flow of the river is compared with the different stages of human life. It goes dancing over the yellow pebbles. It is glancing through the flowers and leaves. It is compared to an innocent child. தெரியுதா? நம்மளோட ரிவர் அப்படி மனுஷனோட வாழ்க்கையை எப்படி கம்பேர் பண்ணுறாங்க. ஒரு குட்டி ஸ்ட்ரீமை வந்து டான்ஸ் ஆடி அது குழந்தைங்களை கம்பேர் பண்ணுது. தென் ஸ்லோலி இன்னசென்ட் சைல்டை பண்ணுது. லைக் அ கேர்லெஸ் யூத். அதுக்கப்புறமா ஒரு யூத். இட் கோஸ் த்ரூ ரஃப் அண்ட் ஸ்மூத் பேச்சஸ் ஆஃப் லைஃப். யூத்துக்கு எந்த பயமே இல்லை. இட் பிகம்ஸ் லவுடர் அண்ட் ஃபாஸ்டர். இட் இஸ் ஸ்வீப்பிங் எவ்ரி திங் ஆல் அலாங் த வே. இட் இஸ் லைக் அ மேன் ஹூ இஸ் அட் த ப்ரைம் phase of life. Afterwards, and the river is moving. It seems motionless, but it keeps moving towards the sea. கொஞ்சம் பெருசானப்புறம் that river is still moving towards the sea. It is like a matured man who silently marches towards the goal. Finally, it reaches the sea like a human life attains eternity. At last, how the river is reaching the sea, similarly, man is also reaching his old age and in the end, his last days, like eternity. Fine, children. Now, moving on to the second question. Describe how the poem clearly describes about the features, functions and destructive power of the river. So not only good qualities, river ku destructive qualities இருக்குது. That how are we going to do it? So you can write title, poet, theme and all. So theme goes like this. The river. Title, The River, poet Caroline Ann Bowles. Theme, river can favor but causes fear too. Paragraph goes like this. A river is a natural watercourse, usually fresh water flowing towards an ocean, sea or another river. Small rivers can be referred to as stream, brook. Water generally collects in a river from precipitation through a drainage basin from surface runoff. Groundwater recharge, springs and glaciers are the other sources. Okay, இங்கே கிரவுண்ட் வாட்டர் அங்கே எல்லா இடத்துலையும் தண்ணி வருது. Rivers can flow from mountains through valleys or along plains. Rivers are sources of water consumption, agriculture and industry. The flow of water in rivers is never constant. The flow வந்து எப்பயுமே நிற்கிறதில்லை. It is moving. High amount of water flowing in rivers after leads to flooding. Flooding is one of the more common and costly type of disaster. Flood வந்ததுன்னா வெள்ளப்பெருக்கம் வந்ததுனாக்கா பயங்கரமான அழிவு வந்துடுது. Flood results when a river runs out of its confines and submerges the surrounding areas. River எல்லாம் நல்லது தான், பட் அதோட கோவம் வந்ததுனாக்கா ஃப்ளட் ஆகி it will distract, damage and everything. However, floods have enormous destructive power. Flood occurs naturally. They can environment. It is not always possible to prevent floods, but it is possible to minimize flood damage. And the moral you can write, a river doesn't just carry water, it carries life. Or you can write, we forget that the water cycle and the life cycle are one. Okay, now moving on to the next section, E section. Based on your understanding of the poem, complete the summary of the poem by choosing the words, phrases given below. So you have a few words in the box. Use them, write it. In the poem, The River, the poet compares the flow of the river with different stages of human life. The first stanza explains how the sparkling river goes dancing over the yellow pebbles and glancing through the flowers and leaves. These acts of river is compared to a curious and innocent child at play. The second stanza compares the river to a reckless youth who goes through rough and smooth patches of life like a youth. Here the river becomes louder, faster and sweeping everything all along the way. In the third stanza, the river becomes like a hard-working man who is at the prime phase of the life. Here the deep and broad river seems motionless, but it keeps moving towards the sea like a matured man who silently marches towards the goal. In the last stanza, the long journey of the river reaches the endless sea like a human life attains eternity. Fine, children? Since this is a writer, we'll sing this in a song format for easy memorization. Fine? River, river, little river, bright you sparkle on your way, over the yellow pebbles dancing, through the flowers and foliage glancing, like a child at play. River, river, swelling river, on you rush through rough and smooth, louder, faster, brawling, leaping, over rocks by rose bank sweeping, like impetuous youth. River, river, brimming river, broad and deep and still is time, seeming still yet still in motion, tending onward to the ocean, just like mortal prime. River, river, headlong river, down you dash into the sea. Sea that line hath never sounded, sea that sail hath never rounded, like eternity. So I hope you understood. You can listen again and again, and it's easy to memorize. Fine, children. So love water, enjoy, and do not waste water. We are seeing the importance of water in the entire unit. The course of river is compared stage by stage of a parallel way to the course of man's life, from start to end, calling death to eternity.